Good morning, my name is Dewayne Norvill. I operate a bike shop downtown Norman called Scissortail Cycles. Today we're going to go over a few basic operations on bike maintenance, things that you guys might encounter on your day-to-day riding. We're going to start out with a flat change. So as most of you know who ride bikes, it's very easy to get a flat, especially around Norman with all the trash and debris on our streets, be it thorns, nails, pieces of glass, stuff like that. I work on a bike in a work stand at the shop, so I can have it off the ground. At home, you may want to flip the bike upside down. You could hang a piece of rope from a branch and hook the rope around the seat to hold your bike up. You could do that in your garage. If you have a bike rack on the back of your car, you could stick your bike on that and it would be off the ground. It makes it a lot easier to work on. And when the bike is in an upright position, it's a lot easier to control everything and be able to pedal the bike and see how it goes versus being upside down where everything is reversed. So we're going to start right now with the front flat. So we've been riding, we've hit something, our tire's flat, we need to take it apart. So on this particular bike, this is your basic mountain bike that most everybody is going to either have or be familiar with. It has what they call a V-brake. These brakes come apart easy to take your wheel off, push them together. You pull the cable out, the brakes pull apart. If your brake doesn't look like it pulls apart like this, you would have to undo the screw on the side to release the brake, but most brakes have some sort of a release mechanism. So now we need to take the wheel off. This particular wheel is held on by a bolt or a nut. Most of your current bikes are going to be a 15 millimeter nut, which is used with either an open end or a box end wrench. I like the box end. We're going to loosen that off. Of course, lefty-loosey to take it apart. We don't need to take it all the way off, but we can pull it out a little bit, and there's a safety washer. We unhook. Do the same on this side. Get that loosened off. These safety washers have little tabs, so if somebody comes by and has a loose axle, the wheel won't fall out, hopefully. So now we have the wheel off and we need to take the tire off. The easiest way to remove a tire is with a tire lever, which looks similar to a screwdriver, but it's smooth and plastic and won't cut your tire. If you pull the tire away from the rim all the way around, this will make it a lot easier to take off. The tire lever has a hook on it, and you just hook underneath the bead of the tire, which is what holds the tire on the rim, and I just peel it away. Once you get one side off, you can typically get the whole tire to come off the rim. So, and they have a valve cap holding the tube in here, so we'll take that off. Now our tire and our inner tube are off. Now on this particular wheel, you notice there's a piece of rubber hanging down. This is called a rim strip. This is important because it covers the spoke nipples, which are the little nuts that go on these. These are essentially long bolts, and these nuts are sharp on the ends. So you have a spoke protector strip that goes on. If yours is broken, sometimes you can retape it back together so it protects that, or just use a piece of tape, or in our case, we're going to grab a new spoke protector strip over here and put a new one on before we put our tire back on. Now we have our tire, we pull our inner tube out. Now instead of just taking this inner tube out and putting a new inner tube in, we want to check our tire and make sure that whatever caused our flat is not still inside the tire. So what I like to do is hold the tire open, put my fingers on the inside and lightly pull my fingers across the inside of the tire as I'm looking, because I don't want to cut myself with a piece of glass or a nail or a tack or something like that. And I'm feeling for anything that's stuck in the tire that's going to have caused our flat or still be stuck in the tire to give us another flat if we put a new tube in. So I don't really know what caused this flat. I see a few stickers in here, but nothing's poking all the way through. So we're going to check our tire, or our tube. Now for tubes, we have a floor pump, which is you can hook up to this and air the tube up. I'm going to use an air compressor just for the sake of time. That's what I have here. Remember, if you do use an air compressor at the gas station or at your house, make sure you don't overinflate your tire, because your tire really only needs about 30 to 40 psi of pressure. And a lot of times these air compressors will go to 100 or more. And so you do run the risk of popping your tire. So I'm trying to fill this tire up. The air is going right out. So I'm just going to kind of see where the hole is. I would imagine this is what, yep, it's got a big cut in it right here. So this is kind of odd because I didn't feel anything in the tire, but I'm going to double look and see if there's an obvious hole, but I didn't see anything. So I'm just pushing the tire to make sure there's not a cut in it that I didn't see, which I didn't. So could be that the tire was just old and just split, which seems to be the problem. Okay, so we know our tire was a catastrophic failure, so there's not a small pinhole in it or anything like that, so we can throw that away. That's too big to patch. I have a new tube here. Our tube is going to come completely deflated. We want to add a little bit of air into it because that'll make it a lot easier to reinstall in the tire and put back on the wheel. So again, I just add a little bit of air so the tube takes its shape. I'm not making a big balloon animal, just so it takes its shape. We know that everything's out of the tire that caused our flat, so I just put the tube back in the tire. Actually, this bike is getting a brand new tire, so we're going to put a different tire on. But same deal, we're just going to put it back together. Same way, tube goes up inside. Get a rim strip here. Our rim strip has a hole in it, and that just goes where the valve goes in. Now we have our tire. If you have a tread on your tire, or usually they make an arrow kind of shape, like a forward arrow shape that's going to roll forward. This particular wheel, we don't have a quick release lever. Like some bikes have a lever that opens to take it off. That lever always goes on the left-hand side of the bike. So we would put the tire tread where that lever was on the left. And this one, it doesn't matter so much. We'll just get it started. So the way I like to do this is start with the valve stem, put the valve stem into the hole, and then start that first bead of the tire. So the first bead of the tire goes onto the rim. And then I'm pushing this bead of the tire onto the rim all the way over. I'm using my fingers. If it gets too hard, you can take your tire lever that's hooked, you can reverse the hook, and you can hook under here into the rim and pull the tire over. You just want to make sure you don't catch the inner tube and pinch it. And then starting back, making sure your tube is all the way in here. And then I like to start back at the valve and get the next bead of the tire in here and work it around. And again, we're making sure our inner tube is all the way inside. It's not getting poked or pinched. And then we make sure our tire is into the bead, or the bead is all the way inside the rim. It makes it easier to fold over, and you can typically do this by hand. If it gets crazy tight, you might check to make sure that down here your tire is all the way into the rim. Again, you can use your tire lever, flip it over, hook the rim, and then pull the tire over like that. Work it over just a little bit, pull it over, a little bit more, pull it over. This tire is pretty easy, so we can just push it over with our hands. If you're using a pump at home, we would now hook our pump to our tire. We're going to pump it up a few strokes just to make the tire take its shape. Once the tire takes its shape, we'll look at the tire and make sure it's all the way on the rim. It's not hanging out. It's not dipping down inside the rim. It's all the way what we call seated, because the bead of the tire has a lip on it, and that lip hooks into the rim. That's what holds the tire on. So we're making sure that looks good all the way around. There's nothing hanging out, gonna pop. Now we're gonna air it all the way up. This obviously takes a little longer with the hand pump than it does the air compressor, but it's what most people are going to have. And I like to air this up to about 30 psi, 35 PSI for town riding. Valve cap back on. And that's a tire change or a tube change. Now we'll put it back on the bike. All right, so again, we're putting it back on the bike. We're gonna stick it back up in here between our brakes. If we had brakes that wouldn't unhook, and you did not unhook them, you might want to leave the air out of the tire until you get it into the bicycle frame so it doesn't get caught on the brake pads. Put this back in. Have our safety washers that connect in here. Snug those down. Now, if your bike is sitting on the ground, you can just tighten the wheel up. When it's hanging like this, I like to pull the wheel up because it does kind of hang down a little bit. And then go ahead and tighten these up. It's not all the way tight. I kind of do them a little bit on each side. Keeps the axle from spinning and make sure that we get everything in here straight. And then this one, when I tightened it down, it kind of pulled down a little bit, so we're going to raise this back up. Once we get our tire in, want to make sure our cables are still, they're not hanging out, they're in the brake. Pull our noodle back on this. That goes in the slot together. And make sure our brakes work. So this brake needs to be adjusted. You can see it pulls further on this side than it does this side, but that's good. We also want to make sure our brake pads aren't rubbing on our tire. Spin the tire. There's no rub, so we're good. If it was rubbing and stopping, then we want to see why. What was causing that is probably the brake, and we have to adjust our brake. So next on this bike, we can look at a little bit, kind of see here that our handlebar is twisted from where our front wheel is. So as we're riding down the road, we're going to be riding straight, but our wheel's crooked. Or when we're riding straight, our hands are going to be a little bit off to the side. So what we want to do on this bike is straighten that up. Now, in order to straighten a handlebar, there's a couple of different styles out there. This is an older style. It's called a quill stem. And a quill stem has a single bolt in the middle that both holds the stem in that straight from rocking back and forth, and also does the up and down adjustment. So newer versions of the quill stem is a 6mm Allen wrench. And it's really tight. Sometimes like this one, it's kind of older and rusty, so we're gonna unscrew it a few turns. There it goes, it broke free. If I unscrewed that and it doesn't actually move, I would take a hammer, hit the top of that, it breaks it loose. And what we're breaking loose is a wedge bolt on the inside. So this bolt, as you tighten this makes this wedge tighter, and that's what holds the adjustment. So on this stem, there's a maximum height, which is right here. So this stem was well inside the frame. A lot of times I see bikes that come in and the stem's all the way high because we're trying to make a smaller bike, work for us as we get taller and stuff like that. And so we're raising the stem, or like this has a seat that's really raised high. The danger we run into is if we pass that maximum exertion line, now we have the chance of this breaking off if we drop off a curb or hit a big bump in the road or something like that. So it becomes a danger that if your handlebars break, obviously you crash, and that's no good. So we want to make sure to look at your stem and that's all the way down where it needs to be. So this one, we'll put it back where the customer had it because this is where they want it. But actually, since their seat's up real high, we'll go ahead and raise this up. Once we get it where we want it, I like to stand in front of the bike, look down the stem and the handle and the wheel and make sure it's straight. And once you get it where you feel comfortable with it being straight, we'll tighten this back down. I like to grab at the wheel with my knees and see if I could twist it, because you don't want to, again, hit a bump and have your handlebars twist. So that's tight, that's good. One other thing that people a lot of times mistake for this bolt is that controls how tight your bearing assembly is. Like this one's real tight because it barely turns. That's this bolt here. And you can use a big crescent wrench, pipe wrench, something like that to loosen this top bolt off. And there's a knurled nut, or a nut that has like little rough spots on it to grab with your hand. That's going to be the adjustment nut. So once you loosen this top lock nut off, you can grab that. I usually use a pair of channel locks because we just need to loosen it a little bit and loosen that to where this now will turn on its own. And then tighten this back up. We just don't want it to have play in it so it's rattly. All right, let's say we get our wheel back on. Unfortunately, our brakes rubbing and our tires, stopping. How do we fix that? Well, there's a few different things that we want to do and to look at. We want to grab the brake lever, feel the brake lever, and make sure that the brakes are opening and closing. Sometimes, especially bikes that get stored outside, when it rains, water runs down into these cable housings. The black parts are the housings. The water runs down the cable. These are steel cables. And as you can see, this one's rusty compared to this one. And as that water runs down, it collects in these bins down here, and it'll rust further. And sometimes that'll make it where your shifters don't even turn, your brake levers are really hard to pull, and you can't move them. So this one's in good shape. It does open and close. So there's two other things we want to look at. So that would be number one, making sure the cable is freely moving and the brake arms are freely moving. Now we want to look at the brake arms and see that they're moving about the same. This one moves more than that one. So we're going to loosen off some spring tension here. So there should be little screws on the sides of your brakes. Sometimes older bikes might only have one screw on one side, typically this side over here. But we're going to loosen, since this one moves the most, we're going to loosen this off a little bit and see if that makes this other one move. That does make it move a little bit more. Some of this not moving the same is because it's pulling from this side, so it has to kind of compensate and then pull that. We just want to make sure that it's not dragging. We don't have a brake like this that only one side's moving, because that's going to cause it to drag. And then the next thing we want to look at on our brake adjust is pad position. I'm going to raise this up a little bit more for easier camera. So pad position is your brake pad here and the way it runs with the rim. So you want it to be in line with the rim. You want to make sure it's not rubbing on the tire. And an easy way to do that is just to loosen the brake pad a little bit. The pad turns. I'm going to hold it with my hand and kind of push the arm in and get the pad to set on there flat. I'm going to start flat and then tighten it up. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side here, make sure it's good. Looks pretty good. I'm going to lower it down just a little bit. Both our brakes are moving. We're spinning. And then now whenever it's spinning and I pull the brake all the way down, it still moves. So our cable is not tight enough. So now we need because our brake lever moves and bottoms out before it actually stops. So now we have a brake cable adjustment here where we can adjust the cable, make it tighter. Oops. Pull that a little tighter. And we want a little bit of movement back and forth. Just adjust a little bit and see kind of where your brake lever is. That's probably too tight. That feels pretty good there. But now I'm experiencing when I stop, a pad is sticking. So this brake pad has a lip on the bottom of it that's sticking. So I want to raise this brake pad up just a little bit. But not up to the tire, not where it hits the tire. There we go. So one of the other basic maintenance things we want to go over that you can do at home, and that is something that you need to do frequently, regardless of whether your bike has an obvious issue, is chain lube. We don't want to over lube our chain because then it gets greasy, and that's grease, especially in the winter, gets on your pants when you're riding. So we don't want to over lube our chain, but we also don't want our chain to be so dry that it just becomes a rusty, squeaky mess that then has rust, and it's just making that awful squeaky noise as you're riding down the road. Grab a rag and make sure my bike is in a gear that it's not clicking. Let's see here. There we go. It was kind of halfway between a shift. So I take a rag and I lightly hold the chain and I wipe any dirt off the outside of the chain. You see quite a bit of grease. So on a chain, you really only need to have the inside portion of the moving part of the chain lubricated. The outside portion of the chain should have a coating on it that keeps it from rusting. Obviously a little bit of oil, and in this case quite a bit of oil and dirt has collected on the outside of the chain, but that's what's going to get on your pants and mark up your pant leg as you're riding your bike. This particular bike has a chain ring guard to keep your pants from getting caught, but you can still get that grease on you. Just get all the excess dirt off so it's not crazy on my hands now. And then whatever chain lube you like. A lot of times people these days are using a wax-based lube that dries. I'm currently into a brand called Rock and Roll, but again, it doesn't matter what you're using. So with our chain lube, we've shaken the bottle up to mix up the solvent and the lubricant that's in it. Our chain does rotate backwards, okay, and you can do this on the ground as well. But then I start at the bottom of the chain and I just lightly squeeze the bottle as I'm rotating the chain around, the cranks, and that's gonna do that 4 or 5 times. And then I'm gonna keep rotating that around. And what I'm doing as my chain is going around the gears and through the pulley wheels back here, it's moving these links up and down, and that's working the lubricant inside the rollers of the parts of the chain that actually need to be lubricated. So I do this a few times. Then I take my rag and I go to a clean portion of my rag. And again, I'm gonna wipe the excess off because we don't need all that lubricant on the outside of our chain. We want it to be inside our chain and not on our pant legs. And we're obviously not going to get the chain totally clean with the rag, but I'm just, again, wiping the excess off. A lot of your modern bike lubes, and once you get this off the outside, it's not really getting on your hands. It's just going to get on the rag whenever it's getting rolled through there. A lot of your bike lubes these days do ask to dry before you ride your bike. So you don't necessarily want to lube your chain every time you go ride. You would lube your chain, let it set all day, or let it set overnight and then ride your bike the next day. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see if, with our comments and likes, if people want to see more of this kind of stuff. If you do, that's great. To see more videos like this about other subjects, tune in to the Pioneer Library Systems YouTube channel. Cool, thanks for joining. Have a great day.